Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we have a spotlight video. We didn't do one of these in a long time. I kind of decided that I will do the spotlights only if there's a really interesting orchid, but I would much rather prefer to do the spotlights when I'm already a little bit experienced or at least acquainted with the orchid. The longer I have the orchid for, the bigger the chances for quite an impressive blooming, and also I would like to include some care tips and things of the sorts, because the spotlights, one, they kind of didn't fulfill me because it was something like, look, a pretty orchid, it is fragrant, it is not fragrant, it's red, it's white, and so on. But also I see in the views and in the engagement with my viewers, I think adding some care tips to the whole mix will be beneficial. So I kind of blabbed too much, and I think it is time to go into the subject. So there we go, spotlights not all that often from now on. But today I do have what to talk about, and this is the beautiful Coelogyne usitana, and I'm having issues showing it to you. But it's okay, we're gonna do some B-rolls as we talk about it. So this is her, this is how she looks like as I'm looking at it. And as you can observe, it is a pendant type of blooming. The striking thing for the usitana is of course the contrast between the very dark lip and the very light petals. On the video, the petals might appear very white, but in reality they're not like that. They are buttery, greeny, slightly translucent, I have to say. They don't have an opaque color. Also, they have that beautiful shimmer that some orchids have on their sepals and petals. She does have it quite excessively on the petals and sepals, not so much on the lip. So from this point of view, the contrast is really striking. Now the lip. It is very big, very wide, very earthy colored. In reality, the exterior of the lip is a beautiful brownish color, but the interior is more of an orange. The feel of it is very velvety and a little leathery at the same time. Maybe that's a personal thing because the brown reminds me of brown leather, maybe. And as far as shape is concerned, I personally love the petals, which are super thin compared to the sepals. It is really hard to imagine that the lip is actually a modified petal, since the petals are the tiniest structure of the flower. The position of them gives the impression that the flower is sort of an animal with horns. It reminds me slightly of a goat because the lip tends to go down a little bit. Anyway, it's just my vision. That's the beautiful thing with orchids. We can all imagine whatever we want when we look at a flower, and of course this will be personal for each person. So we talked a little bit about the flower, the shape, the colors. It is absolutely stunning in my opinion. Now how it blooms. This is really interesting, and I'll zoom you in a little closer as we talk about how this orchid blooms. So the flower spikes start to develop, and actually they mature, the buds, as the new growth matures. It is not fully mature yet, it is actually pretty far from maturing. Here is a completely mature pseudobulb with a completely mature leaf, and excuse this little damage, it is spider mite, but in comparison we do have quite a big leaf and let's say not such a big pseudobulb. This orchid does not produce very plump pseudobulbs as far as I'm aware of. So as the new growth starts to mature, at some point you will see a very sharp pointy tip, which is actually the tip of this sheath. I first noticed this orchid was preparing a bud as the leaf was, I think, 3 or 4 centimeters already out of the sheath. So extremely early in the development of the new growth. The flower spike developed together with the leaf, but as you can see, it's already blooming. It developed really fast in comparison to the new growth, which, by the way, it is still growing, but very slow. Slower than the previous growths. I think it has to do with the flowering. Obviously, the orchid is putting a lot of energy into these flowers. And the flower spike is really thin and flimsy. As you can see, there is no point in staking this orchid. For 2 reasons. One, the spike is just so flimsy that you might actually break it. Second, it will continue to bloom sequentially from this sheath, and for how long, I'm not entirely sure just yet. It remains to be seen, but obviously if you stake it, at some point the spike might just grow out of the stake. And third, there's a third reason, it just looks really nice as a pendant bloom, because the flowers face downwards as well. This is maybe not a very pleasant feature of this orchid. For you to view and appreciate the flower, you'll kind of need to look from below. So if you can find a place for this orchid where you can display it on an upper shelf, that would be perfect and you will be able to see the flower. But if you do a Google search on this orchid and you will see more mature specimens with longer flower spikes, you will see how beautiful it actually looks, pendant like that. So it kind of all makes sense. For the first flower, maybe it's not gonna make sense, but as it grows, you'll see the shape of everything and how it all comes together. It is absolutely breathtaking in my opinion. So as you can see here, we have another sheath developing next to the flower. Now this sheath is not the actual bud. It is a covering made out of a modified leaf that protects the bud inside and the next sheath. Unlike other orchids, this orchid has a very interesting pattern of blooming, let's say. The flower spike does continuously produce buds, but they all come in the form of this little capsule here. Because this is not a waxy flower, the petals and sepals are really flimsy, it is very prone to actually getting damaged. And not only, maybe obtain botrytis because of the rain or moisture, so as it's forming, the bud needs to be protected, as opposed to the Phalaenopsis species, which in many cases have very thick, waxy petals and sepals. It's simply not the case with this orchid, so the sheath has perfect meaning. Now, I will come back to this video as this flower spike matures and I'll insert how long the flower lasted and when the second bud appeared and so on. For now, this orchid has been in bloom for about a week and the flower does not look like it's about to fall or anything. So I think we talked about the flower enough. One more thing, it is absolutely not fragrant. When I purchased this orchid, it was not advertised as fragrant, nor do I find any information on the internet that it would be fragrant night or day. I smelled this orchid during nighttime and daytime, I don't feel anything. So I really don't think it is a fragrant orchid. But oh boy, isn't she beautiful. Now about this orchid. I've had her for 2.5 years, I think almost 3 perhaps. I purchased it as a seedling and let me just show you the first pseudobulb created in my care. It's this one. It's this very, very tiny one. There are other very tiny pseudobulbs right here that are just leaning on the substrate because this leaf is very heavy. She will need to be repotted soon because those pseudobulbs are already almost buried in the medium and that's not okay. So she was a seedling, a very tiny orchid, and she grew very fast, I have to say, for an orchid. Don't imagine catasetum-like speed, but definitely she did produce multiple pseudobulbs per year for me. I didn't find her to be a very finicky orchid. I grown her in a moderate or temperate climate, and the climate I am in right now is subtropical Mediterranean. It's pretty hot. In the winter time it does get cool and my greenhouse is affected by the colder weather, but it really doesn't go to very, very low temperatures. In all of these climates, my orchid did not fuss at all. She grew like nothing happened. So in my opinion, this orchid is not a finicky orchid. She doesn't fuss about humidity, about temperature too much. I did my best to maintain temperatures within acceptable ranges for most orchids, but I absolutely did not do anything special for this orchid. So if you will, normal household conditions I think are just great for this orchid. If you have extremely low humidity, then I would look into a humidifier or a way to increase humidity. But if your humidity is around 40–50%, I really don't think you'll have many issues with this orchid, considering she's a species. That's pretty great. The downside of this orchid is that she's a spider mite magnet. What do the leaves remind you of? To me, they remind me of the catasetum, and they're slightly thicker than catasetum leaves, but not by much. And spider mites absolutely adore these types of leaves. And as you can see, mine has been attacked. And this happened in the past 1 month or 1.5 months. Up until now, the leaf was perfectly fine, but there we go. In the summertime, there is a high chance we all get some pests if we leave the windows open. For those of you who ask where are the spider mites coming from, well, they're actually coming from outside. They can be carried by the wind. And I noticed in the garden downstairs, the roses have spider mites. So there we go. They just come through the window. None of my other orchids in the area were infested with the spider mite, except this one. So you do have to keep an eye out for spider mites. If you have this one in your collection and then a bunch of cattleyas, they will not touch the cattleyas, they will all go on this one. Other than that, I don't think she's prone to having all sorts of issues. Of course, you need to be careful not to leave water standing in the new growth. You can see it looks like a funnel and the leaf will grow long. So this shape will stay on the orchid for a long time. The water can absolutely go very, very deep into the orchid and rot it from inside. The leaves are pretty flimsy on this orchid, pretty sensitive. So I guess that's the soft spot of this orchid, the spider mites and the leaf sensitivity. Other than that, the roots grow pretty nice. They're not very thick roots, nor very flimsy roots either. And as far as watering goes, I've always kept this orchid slightly damp, never super soggy. Well, now I'm gonna transfer her into semi-hydro and I think she's gonna love it. But she tends to not do so well when it's dry. The root tips tend to stop growing if it gets too dry. They would much rather prefer to be damp, so if you're growing in organic medium, I would definitely go with a combination between bark and sphagnum moss. I think you can grow this orchid in sphagnum moss only if you make sure it is very, very airy and not compacted, but I would re-water as the medium approaches dryness. I would not let it go very, very bone dry. In inorganic, let's say clay medium, I think semi-hydro will do great for this orchid. I had her in my previous setup in the mixture of the Ceramis and of the Leca, and it grew absolutely beautiful. I don't have anything bad to say. And to sum it all up, she prefers to be rather damp than dry. As far as light is concerned, I would put her in a medium light oncidium type of light, which means bright shade or artificial light, not direct sunshine. Yet again, the leaves are pretty sensitive and I can see them getting burned really, really fast. Overall, I've never ever had issues with this orchid, except for the spider mite thing and yeah, the sensitivity of the leaves. Other than that though, just be careful with how much you let this orchid dry out, and I don't think you'll have any headaches with this one. And I think that will have to wrap it up. So thank you guys so much for watching. This orchid is available in orchid nurseries. I doubt you'll find it in garden centers or shops. It's more of a collector's item, I guess. But definitely check orchid nurseries. She doesn't have a high price tag. She was actually very cheap when I purchased it. But she's kind of new to the hobby and I'm hoping she will get more attention because it really, really is a charming orchid in reality. And the pattern of blooming, I think, makes it all worth it. So you know the drill. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchids and plants videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye! So I switched my Vanda seedlings to semi-hydro because I felt they needed more water. Yes, Vandas. You want to know the result of that? Ta-da! Oh my goodness, I did this, I don't know, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I switched them. Already, this, what you see here, grew in semi-hydro. So yeah, with seedlings generally, it's better to go with more moisture, but air at the same time, and this includes Vandas, definitely. These guys just came out of the flask a few months ago, so they should be put in high moisture. If you don't like semi-hydro, I think sphagnum moss can do good as well. Be sure not to suffocate the roots. Maintain things airy and damp and moist, and yeah, my goodness. So happy I decided to make the switch.